What's up, y'all? Jarrett Rosen for Louisiana versus all y'all. It's late Saturday, September 28th, or actually early Sunday, September 29th. Just getting back home from Tiger Stadium from LSU's 42-10 defeat of South Alabama, and as per usual, sharing some takeaways from the latest game for the Tigers, which I thought was, probably, if not their best of the season thus far, certainly up there in terms of being a fairly complete performance. It started off with a bang with the freshman running back Caden Durham right off the bat, 71 yards, quick little swing pass from Garrett Nussmeier, getting Durham out in space and made one move, really got a nice block downfield, and he was off to the races, showed some of that high school track speed, damn near had an 86-yard touchdown run on the second play from scrimmage for the Tigers after a quick defensive stop, ends up down at the 1, and then Nussmeier punches it in from the goal line. And so just a lot happening very quickly for that offense. Really exciting to see another huge game for the freshman running back, who ends up with 7 carries for 128 yards and 1 touchdown, plus 3 catches for 89 yards and another score. He was a little bit banged up with a foot in the second half, and so didn't see him as much after the break. Brian Kelly said he doesn't think it's going to be too serious, particularly a bye week coming at a good time next week. And so just continuing to see Durham make the case for more opportunities as this SEC gauntlet now fast approaches 2 weeks from today against Ole Miss coming to town. Nussmeier ends up with a career-high 409 yards on 26 for 39 passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, completed 67% of his passes. And so a lot of positives there, obviously, in terms of some of the big numbers he put up. The interceptions were a little bit frustrating. He owned that. Brian Kelly said that he would, that particularly the second interception, he essentially threw right to a defender in the second half, that he thinks he might have gotten caught up a little bit in the game situation and up big and just trying to make something happen. But it was funny when Garrett was asked about that, the quickness with which he kind of said, yeah, I know better than to make that throw, kind of off balance, rolling out to his right to a guy. And so both of those guys, Kelly and Nussmeier, their feel is that those mistakes were easily correctable, not something they expect to be any sort of a trend or anything like that moving into the gauntlet of SEC play. And obviously, again, a lot of positives in terms of what he was able to do with one of the top probably 15 passing performances single game wise in LSU history. He was up there in the top 10 at one point, and then had a little 5-yard loss on a pass at the end before handing the ball over to Ricky Collins to finish the game out. And so he was right there up in the mix again with the Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow marks. Kyron Lacey ends up leading the team with 5 catches for 107 yards. Had a couple of really nice plays over the course of the game. Aaron Anderson got into the end zone. He had 6 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown. Mason Taylor, 3 catches for 43, including one really beautifully thrown ball by Nussmeier into a tight window to help set up a touchdown to Anderson shortly thereafter. And so a lot was humming offensively. They put up 42 points. In terms of looking at the drives, they scored touchdowns on their first 4 drives of the game, had a 3-and-out at one point midway through the second quarter, and then came back with another touchdown. So 5 of those first 6 drives reaching the end zone. Offense has obviously been something that has been a positive for much of the season, but I was really impressed with the defense to hold a South Alabama team that typically puts up an awful lot of points to just 10 points, and really, other than a kind of misplayed third quarter ball by Major Burns at the end of a nice drive in the third quarter, it was a really strong performance overall by the LSU defense. It was the first game without Harold Perkins, who is injured right now, dealing with a knee injury. And to watch, in particular, Greg Penn III and Whit Weeks fly around. They had 14 and 9 tackles, respectively, covering an awful lot of ground. Brian Kelly credited that defensive front for putting the linebackers in good situations, the defensive linemen handling their gaps and making things tough at the point of attack, and not putting the linebackers in bad situations and allowing those guys to to run around and cover as much ground as they did, and they certainly made the most of those opportunities. I think one of the junctures of the game that stood out most to me was late in the third quarter. A lot of folks had left the stands in Tiger Stadium because the game was well in hand. I think it was 35-10 at that point. And there's a goal line situation for South Alabama, and LSU's effort and energy was great to really take some pride in the situation and not wanting to allow a touchdown. And it ends up with Whit Weeks and Major Burns converging on a nice stop at the goal line to get the ball back to the offense. And so you could see that it meant something to those guys, even though that game was probably well in hand, that they did not want to allow the Jaguars back into the end zone. And I think that's something really nice to build on. And so you end up, again, South Alabama with just 10 points for the game, just 4 for 14 on third downs, less than 30%, 1 for 3 on fourth downs, just over 30%, 3 yards a carry, not the most efficient game all around in terms of passing or rushing. And so in terms of how much we talked last week about Whit Weeks in particular, but other members of that team eyeing the second half against UCLA as something to build upon and trying to stretch that out into a more consistent 4-quarter game. I think you saw something closer to that tonight on both sides of the football for LSU. And again, right where they need it going into this bye week and then into the meat of the SEC schedule. Obviously, the degree of difficulty ramps up from South Alabama when you start looking at Ole Miss and everybody else on the schedule up ahead. But at the same time, for the ups and downs that LSU has had thus far this season, LSU went into this weekend number 14 in the AP poll, number 13 in the coaches, and they're sitting right there on the cusp of kind of playoff territory. And you see that Ole Miss team lost to a Kentucky team that was questioned how good was Kentucky this year. You saw Georgia get down big to Alabama, and then Alabama blow that lead. And so two good teams on the on each side of that primetime matchup tonight out there in Tuscaloosa, but two teams that didn't necessarily have complete games in their own right. We're watching right now Arizona lead Utah early in the fourth quarter. The number 10 ranked Utes, Kansas State, really jumped on Oklahoma State today. And so you're seeing a lot of different teams around the country that aren't necessarily full 4-quarter teams week in and week out. And, part of that's college football in general. Part of that's the new era with the transfer portal and how much roster turnover there are and things like that. And so as much as there have been some frustrations with LSU early on, it seems like they're starting to find themselves, figure things out, and click and understand their roles and whatnot at the right time of the year, with just that one loss early in the season to a good USC team on their belt. And so we'll see how they handle these next couple of weeks, preparing for Ole Miss and everything else on the horizon from there. But a lot of positives for a team that has been frustrating at times this year, that just continues to seem like they might be that much closer to being a more complete team, to turning a corner and being closer to what was expected of them going into the season and what had some question marks during the course of September. Make sure you keep up with everything that we're doing on Louisiana versus all y'all. Obviously, putting up all the interviews and whatnot. Have Brian Kelly, Garrett Nussmeier, and Whit Weeks interviews up on the channel right now. We'll hear from Brian Kelly on Tuesday after practice. Be covering a lot of other LSU and the other colleges around Louisiana, as well as some high school and recruiting. And if you get a chance, don't mind hitting that subscribe button. Please do so. And until next time, y'all be well.